you sick mother whatever.
Just say it.
What?
Where did this insane concoction come from in that crazy head of yours?
I mean, I'd always wanted to do something where an actor acts opposite themselves, because I find that there's a way of kind of introspection and looking into oneself. You kind of are forced to look at the good and the bad about yourself in that sort of context. And so I wanted to do something with a clone. And then I also really liked the idea of exploring, if you know that something's going to happen and then maybe it turns around, where do you go with your life? Do you take the high road? Do you kind of sulk? Do you feel sorry for yourself? And so all of those things kind of work themselves into this very obvious choice to have these clones duel each other to the death, to figure out which one's going to continue to live. And, it's just like any old thing. Life's
great existential questions. Would I kill my double? Yeah. And I'm curious for the actors, what did you all think when you first read the script, and what drew you to it?
I loved the script when I first read it. It was just one of the more unique scripts that I've ever come across in my time. And then getting to know Riley's work. Actually, it was after I read the script that I watched Riley's movies. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, this is a no-brainer. It's like, he's so unique as a filmmaker. He has his own voice. It would be such a challenge for me to insert myself into this specific style and see what I can do with that personally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Riley for many years. He's a good friend, and so when I read this latest script of his, it was, again, such a no-brainer. He came over to the house, we talked about it, and I could not wait to jump on board. He has such a, like Karen said, he has such a specific, unique voice that is only his own, and so we just had such a good time.
Because I seen The Art of Self-Defense, and I remember reading the script going, I said, this is how, what genius looks like. It's so simple. And it's hard to imagine when you're reading the script, how it's going to look, the way Riley works. Because when you watch the film, any of his films, he's very, how he holds shots and what shots he chooses and what he tells his actors to do is it's hard to get that off the page. So I'm always like, wow, this guy's going to make this into something like that. All right, cool.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. What is that process like from sort of page to shooting, and in terms of tone and, your unique voice, Riley, and, how do you sort of translate, this is how I want the world to feel when you're working?
I feel like weirdly, it's super specific, my writing on the page. I know Beulah is saying that he doesn't necessarily know what a shot's going to look like, but if you go back and watch Duel and then go back and read the script, nothing's different. Everything is on the page. I'll pretty much call out every single thing. And obviously on the day, there are things that are not necessarily improvised, but there's moments that come across, or little looks that you're not expecting, that I love to embrace and find. And if an actor ever has an idea, or anybody in the crew for that matter, that I hadn't thought of that is a better idea, I do run with it. But for the most part, it's a very structured blueprint of what the movie is going to eventually be. And I've done that now 3 movies in a row. I feel like Self-Defense, Jesse Eisenberg said at one point that it's the most like the script of anything that he's ever made. So the final product watched just like the script read. And I'd kind of take that as a compliment. I feel like it just shows that you know what you want to do, hopefully always for better, but for better or for worse, you've got a path and you're going to go down that path.
I know you're a jujitsu master.
Master is definitely the word. No.
I don't know if that's a specific term. Yeah.
I'm a brown belt. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't mean to, view you more power than you have. But how much did that, I love the fight scenes between you. You guys are so much fun. And I'm just curious, how much was that, did come from your own jiu-jitsu experience? And were you the fight choreographer at times?
Yeah. I mean, I was technically the fight choreographer.
You were.
Because we showed up and they go, what are we doing? How do we do this? And I was like, we're just going to run through it. Let's exactly what's on the page. Let's do those motions and say those words. And then we shot it basically the way that I like to think of that. Because for the people who don't know yet, it's a faux slow motion scene. So they're kind of creating their own slow motion by just walking like this. Yeah. And my DP and I decided to shoot it like you would shoot a regular action scene. So handheld, knowing that we're going to cut a lot around and just like embrace it, but it's also at a quarter of the speed of real life. And so that was really fun to play around with. And jujitsu is a lot of rolling around on the ground and wrestling. So it's not necessarily that influenced the movie, but I do tend to love action movies, even though I don't make them myself. So it was a fun way of taking a stab at subversion of an action scene. Yeah.
How was that for you guys working on it? It's such a fun scene.
We always talk about it. Scene. It's just
we came away from that scene being like, that was the best thing we've ever done.
Yeah, I mean, because we spent a lot of time on it. I forget how much time.
We did it was half of a day.
Half of a day just doing that. And we were just, it was so hard not to laugh during the takes because it was just so ridiculous. But it was just, in between the takes, we were definitely laughing and just loving it.
I probably was guilty of doing it too many times because it was so much fun. But what that afforded us was in the edit, we had just the pick of the litter with every single shot. And I just loved that every time they did it, they did something a little different and emoted a little differently on this one thing or stabbed a little differently. And we really got to form that scene. It was one of the funnest scenes to edit. And even though I say that, my editor and the assistant editor, Anna Rutke, they both were able to form it pseudo before I even got to like look at it, before I got to work on it. And I was able to watch it and go like, oh my God, this works. And then go through and fine tune some things. But that was a fun scene.
Yeah.
How did you do? I'm curious about all the double stuff. And Karen, how was that for you playing opposite yourself?
Playing opposite myself was such a unique experience. Like weirdly though, I've done it a few times in other things, but it's always been more like a time travel thing. So I'm meeting myself from like the past or the future. So this is a bit different because it's a clone, but like, it was really strange because you obviously have like double the amount of lines to learn. And then you're there and I'm acting opposite a wonderful actress, Katerina, who's playing the other part. And then we're doing the scene and then I'm kind of like trying to plan in my head what I'm going to do when it gets around to my coverage of the other character. And I'm trying to then react off of what I'm imagining myself doing, but then also reacting off of Katerina because she's also giving me some really good stuff. So it was like really... it was like multitasking. That's what it felt like.
How did you sort of differentiate the characters in your head, at least?
That was an interesting process because I feel like I was auditioning a few things maybe in my own head before we landed on one. And then me and Riley really sort of, we kind of talked about it, didn't we? And tried various degrees of how robotic the double might be because she's not really a robot, but she maybe has an air of that. And I feel like we kind of landed on some slightly robotic, like I had this weird idea that she was going to be really animated before I got to set, and then quickly realized that was not the route. But it was like, it was definitely a process to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I think original Sarah is a little more robotic than the double.
I would say that in my mind, original Sarah is the kind of like the parts of me that I don't like. And the double has elements that I wish I had. Like she's a very like confident speaker who holds herself in a completely different way and doesn't mind taking up space. And then there's all the parts of me that's like, I can't take any space. And so I was kind of probably just confronting myself in this.
Yeah, I'm curious, and anyone can jump in on this sort of, I think everyone will come away with a different interpretation of this film and what any sort of underlying meaning might there be. But how do you all see it as sort of a treatise on, modern contemporary life?
This isn't necessarily exactly what you're asking, but I hope that people are able to relate to Sarah in whatever capacity that is. Like in the test sort of process of the movie, when I would show other directors or like my composer, Emma Ruth Rundle, when she watched it for the first time, everyone was able to say in a weird way that they could relate to her and that they felt like feelings that she's felt. And I think everyone's had that sense of like loneliness and searching for something and trying to better yourself. So I hope that people find themselves in it in some way, shape, or form. But in terms of like how it relates to modern society, I never really thought too big in the sense of this is where society's going or this is what's happening now. It was always a little bit more personal, interpersonal emotions and relationships that I was thinking of.
Aaron, who are your mentors and who's inspired you to do what you do? And what was one of the greatest lessons that they taught you?
I love that question, first of all. Who are my mentors? Honestly, I can say this with huge confidence. My wife has actually become such a beautiful, just sort of mentor in my life in terms of just allowing me to learn how to just take a breath and just be calm. She is just such the anchor in our household. She's like the peacemaker. She runs a nonprofit kind campaign, so she travels and just spreads kindness. That's like sort of just what she's all about. And so I feel like I'm a kind guy, but she's just kind of taught me to just take a breath and just kind of ease into everything. I'm trying to think of something else.
That's a good answer, man.
Yeah.
That was really sweet.
Perfect.
I feel so blessed to be able to kind of hold her hand through this crazy journey we're all on,
That's so cute.
Again, for Aaron, are there any films you've seen lately that have impacted you meaningfully?
I just watched Watcher last night, and for me, what Koale did, I don't know her at all, the filmmaker. I thought was just so brilliant, and I cannot get it out of my head. I haven't watched a film that has stuck with me that way in a long time. And so I just loved her take at that sort of world. You're not really sure whether or not she is just playing mental mind games with herself, or if someone actually is watching her and stalking her.
Yeah, this household watched it last night that we're with, and like all friends and family. And it's just cool to know that Watcher is in the same category as us, and that's in competition at Sundance. Like, the genre element is very strong in both films, and Sundance programming them in competition is just super cool.
Yeah.
Beulah, do you have an answer to that question? Any films you've seen lately that have impacted you?
I do.
Nice.
So,
I love that answer, Beulah.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
So,
what was it? I guess, what was its impact on you? How did you feel after seeing it?
when I watched it, I'll never forget, and I don't know if Riley knows how much of an impact it had on me when he showed me at his house. And I remember walking through Riley's door and looking around his house, and he's showing me. And just the way Riley puts, like he says when he writes a script, everything's very specific, everything's very simple. Very simple, very deliberate. And I was like, whoa, this film is you, dude. And I remember like sitting there going, man, I want to do that. I want to make art where I don't want to please anyone, and I just want to be me, because there's no one else in the world that's, me. And Riley's written this thing. It's so hard to describe because it's Riley. Like, it's so I guess the film impacted me on that one, that I got to see it through that weird lens.
What were some of the biggest surprises for you all just throughout the process, whether, from the beginning or later on having seen it?
I mean, I'll start really quickly and say that the craziest thing was that we couldn't have known when I wrote this and when we started talking about making it that COVID was going to happen. So shooting this in another country and having that country be Finland felt so foreign and uncertain and scary in so many ways, but it was incredibly exciting. And then seeing the aftermath of the movie and how it was impacted by the location that we shot and the crew that we shot with, I don't know that the film could have ever been as good as it is, and that I hope it is, had we not been able to shoot it where we did. So yeah, it was a huge surprise, but it also ended up being for the best too.
Interesting. So that was a COVID pivot. You moved everything to Finland? Yeah,
because of the way that they handled the pandemic and their numbers were so low, we ended up moving the entire production there. And it was myself, one of our producers, Aram, and my cinematographer went out there. And then shortly thereafter, these guys came and followed, but everybody else on the ground was finished. So it was a very like outside of your comfort zone sort of situation, but
Yeah.
we all ran with it.
I mean, that was my first flight I was on.
Mine too.
You know, post lockdown and, you know, this new current world we're living in. And so to get on such a long journey, you know, to Finland was an interesting experience, but the production just handled it so beautifully.
Yeah.
I imagine that contributed to feeling like a more sort of insular project. You know, I assume it was a smallish crew.
Smaller crew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same size crew, maybe of what you would normally have. Well, relatively speaking, but the people who were allowed to be on set where the actors and myself were at was very limited. So like, for example, our gaffer normally has a crew of several dudes helping, or several people, helping him carry in lights and gear and all this stuff. And on our set, he was the only one allowed onto the main part. So he's carting all of that in himself. It just shows there's this word in Finnish that like means just like pulling your sleeves up, sisu. And it's like that whole crew had sisu the entire time. Like they were ready to get in there and get dirty and make something really special. So that meant the world to me.
The move to Finland was surprising because it then meant that every supporting actor had a Finnish accent, which was not on the page. So that was actually so cool because it was like just a really strange, unique quirk that we don't even reference really. And I loved that. I just think it gives the film a whole vibe that it wouldn't have had otherwise. I surprisingly love talking in Riley rhythm. That's what I'm going to call it now. Like I want to just stay in Riley.
It was
rhythm.
fun.
Go back.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys practice that, or how do you make sure you're all getting the Riley rhythm?
Well, I wasn't like totally sure. I was like practicing at home, and then the more time I spent with Riley, I was like, oh, the key is right here. I'll just
talk
try
like
to
me.
listen to
Yeah,
him.
the key
And
is
like
Riley. Because this thing didn't this like keep getting.
It got pushed back a couple of times.
Yeah. And so, you know, you had this script for so long, and so it's impossible not to work on it, you know, and you just get to know the rhythm so well with his writing, and it just kind of comes out.
Yeah. And if it's not working for a specific line, then I just go, can we do that one again? Just like a little less, like a little bit more removed. And so often my notes end up being just bring it back a little bit. But then there are times where it feels really natural to let it play a little bit more grounded. And so it was really fun with the actors because they would go with their instinct, and then I could kind of decide where we were at, which is, it's directing obviously, but it's such a specific thing. So at certain points, people even ask for like a line reading. And even though I'm not an actor, I can say it a certain way. And then they go, oh, I see what you mean. And then they do a better version of what I said. So we had all of those types of tricks and workshops on set, just trying to figure out the right space for each scene. Because it's not one note throughout. It definitely has ebbs and flows in a good way. And it was just finding those as a group.
I mean, Aaron, your character kind of comes in midway and somewhat of a supporting role, I guess, for you. But I really felt that you clearly had a whole backstory for him that, you know, we never see.
Yeah. I mean, I love being a part of this project and working with a buddy and new friends. And, you know, I came in, it was mid, like kind of mid shoot. My character kind of comes in midway for the film. And, we shot all my stuff in a very condensed time. I was there 1 week, out in Finland. And I mean, I literally started, I think the day after I landed. So through the entire shoot, I was jet lagged. So I used that. That was part of his backstory. You know, we talked about, you kind of see a couch, you know, might be like a pull-out couch in the back of some of these frames. And, you know, we talked about, oh, you know what? He probably lives here. You know, he lives and breathes this world. You know, he's very passionate about it. And he takes a lot of responsibility in it. And so that's just sort of how I dove in.
Riley, I mean, other than it being Finland, which really, now that I learned that, it does sort of, it all clicks into place, but there's nothing else really about the world that is unusual or future-y. That seems like it was probably a very deliberate choice. So why did you, not want to give them like a weird cell phone or something? I guess the text messaging is a little like funky, but.
Well, it's less about a weird cell phone or weird text, sort of an iOS or whatever, and more about not dating it in the present and in our world. Like when I make things, I tend to try to world build, at least with the past two features. So self-defense and duel both have their own thing where you can tell that it probably exists somewhere in the United States, but why does it look the way it does and feel the way it does? Like it doesn't feel domestic in some ways, it feels foreign in other ways. I like blending all of that, and also anachronistic elements. So having people like watch a DVD, but then their car is a little older, and then they've also they're playing something through older tech. I like playing with old tech. I mean, Trent's computer is really old, I think, on his desk. And I don't know, just like mixing all of that stuff is fun. And there's again, a world building element that I'm after. And I feel like that's just a way of doing it.
Yeah, I love that. And the Finland thing is really funny. So do you want to shout out some of those other actors? Were they sort of last minute changes that you had to use Finnish actors?
And not necessarily last minute changes, but once we went to Finland, it was like, okay, the reality is now we're casting out of Finland. My goal was to cast people in as many roles that I could, who didn't have a specifically Finnish accent, but maybe had like a British accent, or even though they happen to live in Finland. We had some people from the States we happened to find who did community theater there. So we really tried to branch out. I think there's a guy from Spain in the kind of support group scene near the end, and just not have it feel completely Finnish at all times, but letting Finland still ring through. So people who watch it and who are from Finland will know that we shot it there. Anybody else will probably be like, what was this country? Where is this location? Where is this in the United States? Also, my dumb cameo ended up being because we had a person who called in and said that they had a sore throat. And we were like, well, then stay away from set. And then you can't cast another Finnish person. In my head, I'm like, I've already got enough Finnish people in the movie. So then I was like, well, I guess I'm in the movie now. And just had
that
just
was
like
so funny.
by the nature
Looked up and saw my director acting opposite me.
And then I started doing stupid things, and Karen's like,
yeah, he started milking.
He's going for it.
He was like staring at the hot dogs that were going around, like at the beginning of the scene, like really having a full moment. And I was like, that's kind of brilliant, but you're going to cut that. Like,
I mean, it's still kind of there, just that my editor put in. Yeah, my editor put in a thing where you can hear a sports game happening in the background. So it seems more like I'm watching TV. But my motivation in that scene was, I'm hungry. I want a hot dog.
Yeah.